Here we explore the topic of crisis ready CX, lessons from adversity and strategies for resilience. In this conversation, the thrust would be on how organizations can proactively prepare for and effectively respond to unexpected challenges, ensuring that customer experience remains resilient even in the times of crisis. So, we shall now welcome our esteemed panelists to the stage. First up, the moderator, Mr. Deepak Jhavar, SVP Sales, Razor.ai. Let's hear it for him. Daniel Davidson, Head of Customer Service, DP World. Hitesh Dua, Head of Customer Experience. Ankur Sabharwal, Vice President, Philips Machine Tools, India. Rahul Tandon, Chief Customer Service Officer, Ecom Express Limited. Love Kush, Chief Experience Officer, Ralia Bus. And Akash Jaggi, Global Director, Supply Chain Customer Experience, Schneider Electric. Well, that completes our panel. It's over to the moderator.
We have some from the mobility stuff, so we'll kind of break that down. It's going to be an interesting one. So let's kind of start off with Daniel. We'll pick up the logistic area and then kind of move into the mobility. And Ankur, you can kind of pitch in all shapes and form. And specifically, I have an interesting question for you. So in a rapidly changing landscape, how do you proactively identify potential threats to customer experience, and what strategies do you employ to stay ahead of emerging crisis, Daniel?
Thank you, Deepak. And very interesting question because, so just to let everyone know my background or what we're doing, I represent DP World and we are into the business of ports and logistics. Now, there are so many stakeholders that we're dealing with, right? It could be government, non-government, you've got your freight forwarding community, you've got shippers, consignees, custom house agents, the customs authorities, and so on. And we, as an organization, we're promising service, and what we own is the infrastructure. Yeah, so that becomes a bit of a challenge because most of the times there is no service failure because if you have the infrastructure in place, if things are working in harmony, there's no challenge, right? But whenever we have a challenge, it's generally always a crisis. Yeah. So let me not talk about COVID because I think the previous panelist also spoke a lot about COVID and all of us know what happened during COVID. But let's look at the current crisis. So currently we have a crisis in the Red Sea, right? There's a little war going there and some container vessels have been attacked. Things like that, and that's affecting the trade. It's also affecting the exports out of India because only once the vessel comes into India, then can you load more containers and send it out. So it's affecting the complete logistics scenario as we speak. Now, how we deal with this is we don't deal with it during the crisis, never ever. And because we are into B2B and we are into the relationship business, we're always trying and ensuring that the relationships are strong when there is no crisis. And we are engaged with our customers when there is no crisis. Because when there is a crisis, if you suddenly announce that there is so-and-so crisis, there are crores of rupees at stake because we're talking of container loads, right? And then the customer is not able to digest it. So that's how we deal with crisis, or at least announcing the crisis. We don't wait till the point where the crisis occurs. So that's what we do. Yeah.
Understand. Interesting. And if you may also want to highlight specifically around maybe proactive measures which we are doing and the usage of technology to be able to kind of proactively understand, estimate, maybe one part is relationship and to kind of deepen that. But if you could throw some light in terms of, what technology measures were taken to be able to kind of estimate this, proactively work on that.
Sure. So what we're doing is we are over communicating internally. And we, of course, use technology to do that. And I think on a daily basis, everybody within the customer experience organization knows what's generally happening. Because if the flow of trade has to stop or stops, then we ensure that everybody gets to know what's happening so that they then manage their customers accordingly. So that's where we use technology, and mostly the usage of technology is communication tools, internal communication tools.
I understand. Perfect. So coming to you, Akash, given from Schneider, and I think it'll be interesting to move from one leg to the other. Considering the global nature of crisis, how do you ensure a consistent, coherent customer experience across different regions and cultural contexts during challenging times?
Well, thanks for the question. And, Schneider Electric, first of all, I think a lot of people have a little bit of misconception and they mix Schindler and Schneider. So we are not the lift makers. So, okay, so we are in end-to-end, whatever you can imagine about electricity, we manufacture that. So be it from a copper wire to a switch to any part which is a transformer, you see the grids, BSES grids, we make them. We have automation products, we make human-machine interface, or you may call it HMIs or PLCs. Our product portfolio is huge. Now, when it comes to customer experience, we are more, I think our 80% of the business is B2B, and 20% would be a mix of B2C or B2C of C, customers of the customers. So when we look at this kind of a business model, it becomes very important for us to understand and break the customer experience into basically three forms is what I believe in. The very first thing that we actually believe in our organization, Schneider Electric, is that we need to understand the customers better. So we have a strategy of managing crisis, but then that does not happen if we do not understand the market well. So when I say the customer better, there are a lot of personas that people have created. A lot of people spoke about it as well. I think it's not anything new or anything which is out of the blue I'm talking about. But I would say that when it comes to customer personas, 6 years back when we created a customer persona, now that persona is a grandfather because the grandson has come out of a good B school and his requirements have changed. So if I have to manage the crisis, one major part is that do I understand what the customer has evolved as? Maybe the customer that I thought is a persona 6 years back wanted, some paper bills and the packing list in paper and they wanted to sign on there. Today, the customer wants an e-packing list. They don't need any interface of paper. They only need a digital contact. So that's one thing. So are your personas or the understanding of the customers evolving with time? That's the first part. The second part is how do you create the external view? Now after COVID, I understand, you mentioned it well that, people talk a lot about COVID, but COVID was a perfect storm when it comes to supply chain. I think you would understand it quite well, right? So it was a perfect storm. Whatever could go wrong, it actually did. Now, when I talk about what happened, it still has the rippling effects. I still see a lot of material, a lot of learning in supply chain. Supply chain used to be a box movement. If I go back like 5 years, it used to be box movement. I've heard, big leaders talking to supply chain, leaders that, hey, come on, yeah, just move the boxes from a DC to the customer's end. And that's what supply chain used to be. Look at where we are today in supply chain terms. We are transformation department of the entire organization and the business. We are actually at the front foot, and we are trying to run the business in a way that how the customer actually expects the business to be done is basically dependent upon logistics today. Is basically dependent upon supply chain today. If the customer wants a pallet, this is how we give it. But we need a very good voice of the customer. We need to understand what the customer needs. So it is imperative for us that we create that kind of a voice of the customer program where we collect that external view from the customers and we make sure that we listen to each and every feedback that comes with any kind of a survey, with any kind of a call at the contact center, with my sales guy going to actually some customer and recording the voice, converting that into text, then coming to the topic. The That's the third part now. I'm touching upon the third part, transitioning with this to the third part. That with the recording of this feedback and with what we've learned from this, I need an internal system where my internal system is so robust that I do not have to work on analysis of actually looking at the topics that I need to work on. I need a ready material. If I waste time in creating presentations and looking at, okay, I've hired a person whom I'm paying like 30 lakhs to do an analysis on what the customers are saying, I'm so sorry. Please spend 50 lakhs on the technology and make sure that the moment the customers are talking, you get the feedback then and there. So today we are so equipped with digitization, so equipped with AI and ML, that all this is just a blink of an eye. You just blink and this is done. Yeah.
Yeah, I have a question.
Yeah,
So
sure.
you spoke about collecting that data, right? And there will be various touch points of the customers which,
Yes.
they might be contacting you.
Yes.
So how do you maybe utilize technology or people or processes in your organization to capture that information first and also to make it insightful and then deploy it? Because it, like you mentioned, it has to happen very, very fast to cater
Yes.
to it. So
That-
if you can
yeah.
go deeper into that.
Sure. Thank you for the question. I think I was touching upon the same topic while I was just talking that, see, the customer, so there is something called living lens. Okay, that's the technology that we have. Now, what that does is that if you are a customer of a stature, I can't name my customers, that openly, but yeah, if the customer is too big, and usually we see that the customers do not respond to the feedbacks, there is a lot of survey fatigue. Because in today's world, you go and buy a pan ka, masala ka packet and you give your number and you get a survey. Maza aaya ki nahi? You know? Correct? Now the point is there's a lot of survey fatigue. So what we do is this technology enables me as a salesperson or a supply chain person that when I go and meet the customer, I record it, record the voice, that gets converted into the text. That text is analyzed by machine learning. And that machine learning tells me that the customer gave you 5 different, topics to work on. Similarly, this is only delivery touchpoint that I'm talking about. That's what I had for Schneider Electric globally. But if you look at the other touchpoints like get quotation or get technical support, we have overall 6 touchpoints that we have in the customer journey in our organization. All of them are actually converting the same type of feedback. The same mechanism is followed everywhere, right? And what happens is that our partner who's actually deploying all this feedback and converting that into workable actions, it is a real-time thing that when the moment the comment goes inside the machine learning circulates that and gives us the touch point that, okay, this is the touch point that the customer is not happy with. So we have a ready reckoning now, and where we can refer back to the tool and say that these are the 5 things that I want to prioritize for next year. How awesome can that be that I don't need a person to tell me how it is? And okay, so one point I definitely would like to say that earlier the accuracy of this kind of topic, identification used to be about 30 to 40%, right? But, and my business is not very, contact center specific business. People don't talk very typically about 6 things or 7 things. It is an ocean because he can talk about any touch point. And the analysis has to be accurate. So today we are sitting at around 85% accuracy, right? So this is the way we are actually trying to make strategies. We are trying to take actions, ready reference to make action plans. No need of people intervention, just execute.
So I had a couple of questions around
Sure.
this. So one, when we were talking about VOC and regionalization of that content, one essentially, people speak different languages. So in your learning through this journey, where language is a critical aspect to be able to kind
Yes.
of assess that from a VOC standpoint, number one. Second, in terms of given it's a very, very, very heavy on managing the inventory and mapping the demand and supply in that context of it, because the sourcing is done through different regions, different vendors, etc. I'm saying how was the advent of one part was on the VOC, which is on the front end side or the back end. How were we using a technology and how's been that journey? I think it'll be nice to kind of throw in some insight there.
Sure, thank you. So first question, languages, definitely. Schneider being a very globally present, kind of a brand. We have this analysis being done in more than 50 languages today.
Oh, nice. Okay.
Okay, and let me name my partner also. Medallia is my partner. they really ramped up really well because in the last 1 year, the kind of technology that we've seen ramping up at Medallia, I think they've helped me a lot. And there are a few partners here sitting, here in this crowd as well, where I've spoken to them, and I wanted some innovation, but now, I can say that, that it was really tough. But venturing it with my current partner was the only solution that I had, and it really helped me. So this kind of technology is there. Now at the back end, how we are working on this. See, being from supply chain, let me talk not only customer experience, but how exactly the data works at the back end and how we are creating that niche, right? So creating those RPAs to work on the planning tools, the robotic process automations, creating that technology that tells me that this is the upper or the lower limit of some failure, and being in that threshold is what is the best quality of experience for the customer. These are the kind of back-end processes that we've deployed internally. So if an arm is picking up a box from point A and keeping it at point B, how many failure modes do we have, and how many times can it fail, is something that we've already deployed 3 years back under the industrialization 4.0.
Understood.
So all that data is getting collected and is stationed at one point somewhere in the plant and the DCs today. So that intelligence helps us in improving the internal processes, which is the very, very important part of any organization. If you do not know where your shop is going wrong, how can you expand the shop?
Got it.
So this is how we are actually measuring it at the back end, and we relate everything to the customer experience and everything to the improving voice of the customer as well.
Interesting.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Akash. So, coming to Rahul, we are moving from ports to Schneider to a very interesting e-com end-to-end experience. So, quick question. So, when we're looking at considering the diverse nature of crisis and we're talking about being crisis ready in that context of it, how do you customize your crisis response strategy to ensure a tailored approach in these times?
Okay, a very apt question. First of all, good afternoon, folks. I'm between you and your lunch, so I'm not going to make a very cliched answer. Quick thing about the company that I represent. I'm from Ecom Express, and we are in the business of e-commerce logistics. We basically do end-to-end logistics and carry shipments across the length and breadth of this country, right? The reason I had to tell you this was because when you traverse crores of shipments across to every pin code of the country, there's bound to be a crisis every day, every minute, in some part or the other. And being so, you have to have tech in the midst, in the center of things to solve, to help humans solve problems. And I'll go back a little in time, recent memory, COVID, yeah? And it's a very oft-repeated thing, but for logistics, especially the part of logistics that I'm in, which is e-commerce logistics, it was a humongous challenge. We've all lived through the times wherein we were in quarantine, wherein government said that only essential goods, or one day something was in a red zone to an amber zone to a green zone. But shipments were being delivered, right? And the folks out there, my teams out there were delivering those. At the back of all of this, there was technology. And how did we do it? Let me give you a little bit of insights, right? So for example, I live in Saratavia. Today it's a green zone, tomorrow it's a red zone. What did it mean? That today I could receive everything from a nail paint to my dose of protein shakes, but the next day when it was a red zone, I could only receive medicines. Now, this creates a crazy amount of friction in the entire supply chain, because you need to ensure that you're only being able to transmit permitted goods to permitted spaces. And that is where technology actually came to the fore. We had to codify every shipment that we were transmitting into their categories. The bagging had to be done in such a manner that if for a given day, let's say a locality, you could deliver only medicines, the boy didn't have to look at it. The product itself, the system allowed him only to take out medicines, right? Nice. And while people were sitting in their homes and working from home, our teams were out there delivering shipments. Now, what changed again? Till a month before COVID, we were saying NPS, CSAT, meet the customer, hand the shipment on his doorstep, right, shake his hand literally. And 10 days later we say, no, 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 contactless delivery. So the whole game changed, right? And that's where even tech played a role because we are, let's say on a given day, we have 30, 40,000 delivery guys who are delivering, training them, explaining them all these nuances. You can't do classroom training, not in an environment that we are. So that's where, again, tech-based training tools came into play, right? And I mean, forget COVID for a second. You see every day of our lives, people in logistics, especially fast logistics, will understand. A lot of what we do is, at least in India, is on the highways. Every day there will be some accident that would happen, some band that will happen, some political rally that will happen. But your shipment has to get delivered because if I don't deliver a shipment to your doorstep on time, you will go all over social media saying the brand is useless. And hence, that's where again technology plays a role. Why? Because we have to track and trace every shipment every minute. Like in case of Daniel, once he's out onto the sea, unless a storm comes by, hopefully the product would reach, or let's say the crisis that's happening in the Red Sea. In our case, the jam at Mahipalpur can also cause a crisis on the shipment, right? So how does tech help in all of this? Every shipment behind the scenes has got a promise date mapped. And every minute we are actually calculating shipments who have a risk of promise being breached. And we are creating opportunities to prioritize those shipments to make sure that the right bag reaches the destination in time for a delivery. So adversities in our business, one is the larger ones like COVID, but otherwise we face it every day. And the largest part is to do with delays in this ecosystem. And that's where technology is really running at the back end.
So, understand the complexity can be as dynamic, hence agility becomes key. But I think it'll be also nice, given the complexity nature and the demand in terms of to be able to have things delivered in that short span. It'll be nice to kind of throw in some part of the insight around, what's been the learning and from the agility standpoint or the usage of tech, what's really made that difference and impact in the same space in your journey?
Okay, I'll give you one of the biggest things we've been going to market with, which we've recently solved using technology. One of our USPs is that we deliver to places normally people don't deliver, which is the tier 3, tier 4, tier 5, the tips of India, the hinterland, the villages. The biggest challenge you have as you go deeper is an address becomes a very, very unstructured or in some cases fictional piece of thing to decode and try and deliver, right? What we have used, we've used a lot of AI, NLP, phonetics to use all of them put together and get some meaning out of a address, map it to a pin code and get your shipment to that doorstep. And I'm not talking metros. Metro addresses are largely you enter it, it'll tell you your pin code is right. But when you start delivering right into the depths of the country, solving the address conundrum is the biggest challenge for any logistics company, right? And I think we are in that journey where we are using generative AI to continuously read addresses, to be able to give them some semblance because, see, today e-commerce in India is growing in the hinterland. The guy has a mobile phone. He knows how to order, but he doesn't know whether his address was correct or not. His address would be Rahul Tandon, care of Ashok Tandon, some part of Jharkhand, he would just mention some random pin code. We are using technology to try and decipher that. You wouldn't believe it, even at the largest e-commerce platforms, you have almost 40% bad addresses. That's what we try and decode and get the shipment to that guy's doorstep. So that's one of the biggest things, which if you see from a crisis standpoint, for a logistics company, it's a big crisis to get your shipment in those scenarios. But that's where we're using a lot of tech to try and continuously build and improve upon address intelligence, throw it back to our platforms. Because you're not shopping on me, you're shopping on some platform, which today does not have an address correction tool. So when we build this AI, we actually go back to them and say, why don't you use it at the input correction? So we're trying to improve the entire ecosystem of delivery.
Sure. This is a personal question, and I think I was having a chat with Daniel just about offline on this. So just coming to that question specifically around this, in 2011, I think I'd ordered things at AliExpress, part of the Alibaba And I think we were ordering things around 50, $100 just to kind of test out really कि ये product आता तो है कि नहीं China से. And surprisingly, we had ordered like even like these iPad frames and like even the covers, and we realized even a piece of glass came to us wrapped in bubble wrapped in one piece. Most importantly, but more so, it came in through Indian Post. Very, very clean, structured in a particular time. And for some reason, and just query, given it's the same space, given Indian Post is cracked, and I'm sure would have cracked most part of every nukkad kona we know of would have Indian Post. I'm saying, is there some learning to kind of draw out of that, one from a quasi part of maybe traditionally how they operate versus the advent of technology and what it could do to kind of leverage some part of that learning? I'm saying, are we looking to explore that learning, building in tech around that to be able to kind of, because what I can see right now, all of that model is re-replicating some part of it, which maybe either Indian Post has or a similar structure to be able to kind of make sure that it's accessible and available to every corner. And I'm sure we are addressing it in different possible ways, but just wanted to pick your thoughts on that.
Yeah, okay. So if you ask me honestly, in terms of size and spread, we are as big as the Department of Post, right? Yes, there is a lot of learning from them, and they've also actually unlearned and learned, right? Now today they have a separate function which is actually helping them grow their e-commerce deliveries. But yeah, the learnings largely we've had is not so much on the tech space, but the entire last mile delivery ecosystem. What they brought to the table was the ability of that boy on the last mile to recognize an address of a person to ensure, see, one is your normal addresses, normal letters and inland letters. Those days, you would have gone repeatedly to that same address, right? But today, with the population expansion and number of people who are actually ordering on e-commerce, the frequency of delivery and the nature of delivery, and because it's not snail mail, it is much faster. So the only thing we probably learned from the Department of Post is where to place my delivery centers and basically how to create my mesh, right? But not so much in technology. I mean, I wouldn't learn largely in technology, but yes, how they actually created the entire network, where they placed their hubs. Because finally, if I have to move goods from point A to point B, I have to move them in the most optimal manner, both cost, time, speed. So those are the points where we actually learn.
Understand. Yeah, it's still data in that way. Got it. Great. Coming to you, Ankur, I mean, given we are talking about crisis ready, I think it's interesting given your background of armed forces, and probably it will be nice to kind of share in a minute to talk about your background. But would be interesting to get a sense in terms of your insights on communication strategies around these times of crisis, to be able to kind of maintain transparency, reassurance, and information accuracy to maintain that level of trust.
Thank you so much. So I think I'm the least learned person here and the freshest corporate soldier. Retired from the armed forces last year after 21 years and joined Philips, a manufacturing sector industry wherein we were like last 9 months we've delivered in 900 plus locations in India, apart from Middle East and Southeast Asia. And huge learning for me as well, being the transitioning part. You know, I've been hearing a lot of insights about customer experience. I just want to take a step back before I address the crisis issue. So you see the customers, there are two parts. One is the internal customer and the second is the external customer. First, we have to sell it to the internal customer. They have to get convinced. Like when I was in the armed forces, you guys were my internal customers. I had to convince you that you can sleep peacefully. So that those kind of, and we are very poor at that, by the way, because we don't publicize, like we don't make Mavericks and all those movies, which we should be. And fortunately, recently we've started doing that. That is one. Similarly, in any organization, one needs to have those internal customers convinced first, and then only we move to empathy and those things to the external part. Solving the metrics of experience versus the value for money thing, this conundrum. Now there are three different aspects to this as well: the needs, the wants, and the desires. Today's customer what I have seen, I may be slightly, I'm slightly in disagreement with uh, some statements that have been made. Today's customer is not only interested in their need being satisfied, that everybody is doing it. They want, it has switched to a want now. Where the need is mediocre, but the experience has to be also mediocre. It's no longer survival because there's so much of competition and there's so many people who are delivering the same thing. E-commerce, delivery, and all those. Like they all are in the game, and everybody wants to take the share of the pie. What I am very sure going ahead, this want will again turn to desire. People may not be able to, it's an aspiration. Tomorrow, and I have served in 16 states of our country, let me be very honest about it. Before metros could get the want context, the villages had already got it. Because they were happy with their needs being satisfied, and suddenly you expose them to a newer technology and a fresher thing, they suddenly went from the value for money thing to the experience part because money was already there. They already had the means to buy that stuff, but they could never get it. So that is one thing that I feel very strongly that all our service providers need to gauge before they start developing techs and AIs and inbuild those kind of issues in the last mile delivery, so as to say. Coming to the communication strategies, again, as far as in crisis is concerned, COVID or any other crisis, see, we'll always deal with a crisis. There'll always be a crisis. Today morning, somebody took 4 hours to come from, Dholakua to Mahipalpur. That is a crisis in itself. Although crisis for me is a much bigger magnitude than this. But yes, today that becomes a crisis, not reaching there on time, for example. Even in communication, there are 3 different aspects. One is the relevance of that communication. Where are you communicating? Which part of the customer delivery are you communicating to? One is the sales part. You already sold. Now from sale till the time the order gets executed. So that is only the first part. The second is while the order is getting executed. And the last part is post delivery of that order. Ironically, most of us understand customer experience in terms of post delivery service. The first 2 parts, because they say well begun is half done. The moment you've touched those points and given him that experience of ordering that particular product and engagement that you are taking it कि वो खाली सामान खरीदने नहीं आया है, उसके पास खरीदने के और choices भी हैं. Till the time we start understanding that, those relevance, the accuracy of the communication, and the validity of the communication and the transparency will fizzle out. So any strategy that we have to build around communications in crisis has to take care of these 4 aspects. Medium means are already existing, which I think all my learned audience knows exactly.
Very, very nicely said. And I think just coming back to that word of just being mindful about it early, if in every stage, and just not take it at the last leg. Thank you so much. And I think it deserves a big round of applause for being 21 years of serving
Thank you so
the
much.
armed forces. Coming to Lavkush, I think I think the audience would love to know a little bit more about Rally on Bus from a mobility standpoint. Apart from that, just a quick question. In the digital age, how do you leverage social media and other online platforms to manage and enhance customer perception during a crisis? That's one. But also, I think it'll be interesting to throw some light from the learnings or how you're making mobility more interesting, more fun, and how are you touching on different data points, using that, like for example, Ankur was talking about VOC and leveraging that to be able to kind of enhance that. I think it'll be nice to kind of mix that and club that from a crisis standpoint as well.
Sure. Thank you. That's an interesting question. So I'm the Chief Experience Officer at Rally Arbus. For ease of understanding, you can think of us as Uber of buses. We deal in mass mobility services. US is our largest market. We're also present in Canada, Germany, Brazil, and we are going to be very soon launching in India as well. I'll tackle the first part of your question first, where you said that how do you use social media. So in the Indian context, if I were to share some detail, there was a study done in year 2022, which revealed that India has 472 million active social media users. To put that in context, it's like the whole population of United States and some more, right? We are all but very exposed with the virality aspect of social media and the virulence that it can cause if things are not right. Right? I think at the very core of it, social media or any communication channel is only about communicating what has already been achieved or what can already get done. The real brilliance really lies in understanding your entire customer journey, mapping that well, right? We have to understand that people are making these solutions for consumption of some more people. So they're human on both sides of the aisle. We've got to understand that in the entire customer journey, what are anxiety points? Like for example, if you talk about mobility, before you board the bus, you're most anxious, right? Will I reach the bus stop on time? Will the bus be on time? Will I be able to recognize the bus? What happens to me when I go inside, etc., etc.? Similarly, when you are getting down, will my luggage be well taken care of? Right? Will I get it in one piece? Am I going to have a space of my own within the bus? Is it going to be clean, hygienic? Is the environment going to be congenial and all of that, right? And today technology provides us with a lot of data. You can have sensors deployed, you can take video feed, analyze them quickly with the help of AI to understand what each customer within the bus really needs. And then over a long period of time, you can triangulate that data with frequency of travel, routes, time of the day, and all of that to understand that this profile of my customer is most likely to do what, and can we allow him to do that, right? There's one critical aspect that we take very seriously that is called customer effort. How can I progressively reduce customer effort? Can I become present for the customer at the point and time and the space where they need me? And data a rich study of data can really help us do that. So organizations need to start investing in statistics and mathematics and advanced physics. Those are very, very important for you to understand trends and then use machine learning, AI, generative AI and other tools to sort of make sure that last mile delivery of that conversation happens, right? Especially on social media, I think it is not just a service or a communication medium, but also a great PR machinery, right? It's important to be transparent, right? Organizations fail and customers understand that, right? Both on the demand and the supply side, there are human beings, like I said, and people understand that in real world, things break. It's important to be honest, it's important to own up and be very forthright about your communication. We try to be too smart, when you try to sort of make sure that you don't acknowledge the issue, that portrays your brand image really badly. And there's a very high chance that the consumer might not, choose you for their repeat business. So the idea here is that can you acknowledge it really quickly that yes, this error happened, right? And then make sure that you keep communicating the progress that you're making to solving it, right? If there are genuine delays, make sure that you do the old-fashioned communication. You can use technology to do that. It doesn't have to be human intensive. But that information has to reach, right? A bad news delivered, delayed becomes worse. So how do you make sure that you acknowledge it quickly? How do you make sure that you keep the customer honest about the progress that you are making? At the same time, how do you use that instance of failure to go back and enhance your processes? Failure mode effect analysis is a great, great tool, right? That we can look at. The idea is to keep preempting what could go wrong and then build safe fail for that. So once in a while, you could still get a black swan event. COVID or something out of the blue could still come and rattle all your plans. But the idea is that is a repository of what could go wrong growing with every incident actually happening, going wrong on the ground.
Understand. So I think offline when we were chatting about certain data points we are capturing, including, on a particular route, people are reading, hence you essentially, one is reading, people are napping, depending on which route, people are doing what set of
I'm so happy it piqued your interest.
No, it's not about picking interest. I think these are all data points in some way or the other relevant to the business. What was interesting was, however, is these data points are getting captured.
Correct.
And my question was just in correlation to that. So how, let's say, for example, do we factor in, let's say, on a particular route, are we factoring in saying these are the 3 top problem statements, which assuming like people are napping, hence essentially, I'm saying like how,
Got your point.
how does
So
Rally
let
and
me take
Bus,
2, 3 examples. See,
yeah.
what happens is, for the sake of security, I think being in the video feed is now an accepted practice and people have understood it. It is not largely seen as invasion into privacy, though there are some people who have strong views. But then if you seek customers' consent and then you are keeping it into surveillance, if you're capturing the video, then you have AI technologies which can very easily uh, read the gestures of the customers and tell you what the customer is really doing. And accuracy is well into 95%, right? How many customers are sleeping, how many are listening to music, how many may be reading, all of that. You can get very good data on that. You can also, through sensors, measure to what degree has the seat been reclined, right? And use that information to, when you get a new bus on board, how do you do the, the interiors differently? How much leg room should be there? You can use all of that data to sort of feed back to the OEMs as well, right? Now imagine that there's a particular route. Let's take an example. Let's say from New Delhi to Chandigarh, for example, right? And if you were to analyze and say that 42% of my customers like to listen to music, then what is most important? It's most important that there's zero rattling inside the bus, so they can really enjoy their music, right? So how do you make sure that you design and in your preventive maintenance, you ensure that there's nothing moving, causing noise? Let's assume that another data point tells you that 30% of my customers like to read, right? Then how do you make sure that the quality of the overhead lights, that they are warm and they're placed in a manner, they are checked all the time, that they're never faulty? And how do we make sure that they beam at the right place, not disturbing the other one, other passenger sitting on the side, right? Let's assume that we know that some people are napping. Then how do we make sure that the curtains can automatically shift for these customers? If we know enough, then the curtains can automatically be shifted for this customer, right? Can we, from the behavior, if I know that the person takes a nap, can I make sure that I welcome them into the bus with a little blanket and a pillow, saying you might need it, right? If somebody is a reader, can we sort of introduce them to new publication? Can we give them some information, some book clubs? Can we do that? The idea is, without being intrusive, be very, very observant of what your customers are doing, and then find a way to, in a most comfortable manner, fulfill it. Of course, customer is the king. Somebody wanting to sleep every day might choose not to do it the other day. That's an acceptable choice to make, and you have to be sure that you are not in the face. You work in the background, much like an operating system of a computer, which enables everything, but it's not quite visible. All you experience is the browser or the app. So you have to ensure that you are that force in the background that controls everything, measures everything, at the same time make sure that the manifestation of it is so seamless that it does not appear force. And therefore, you tend to believe that, oh, that's so nice, I might need it, right? And now, because some other mobility company might not be measuring it or not doing it so effectively, there's just no way they can match that experience. And that becomes your differentiator, as it were. And an USP if you do it enough number of times and well with enough number of customers. So the idea really is that don't just collect a lot of information, try and make sense of it, and then promise a few things, but do them well every single time. That's the mantra, really.
Sure. Thanks, Love. And coming to Hitesh, given just continuing in extension with the mobility, given ex-Uber, it'll be nice to kind of throw in some part of light. So, I mean, one, in terms of organization being in crisis, maybe COVID or pandemic would have been one. In terms of how were it dealt with, just from a customer experience standpoint, and not just Uber in specific, I'm saying you could pick IND Money.
Right. So everyone is waiting for lunch, so I'll quickly, narrate, a couple of instances from my past experience. So right now I'm working with a startup called Huru, and it's a UAE-based startup where we are simplifying finance for the audience. And also previously I have worked with Uber and IND Money. So because at Uber we used to see millions of trips happening 24/7, and while the COVID hit and we saw zero trips, absolutely, Uber stopped, everything stopped at that moment. I think during that period of time, building trust with everyone, with the investors, with the customers, with our driver partners who were the backbone of the business, I think that is essential for the brands. Being resilient and showing fortitude at the time of crisis is something which I picked up at that point of time. So there was, while there were zero trips, but Uber actually invested crores of rupees building an Uber Care Fund. Right. So there was a direct money transfer which was being done into the bank accounts of these driver partners so that they can sustain their life in the time of crisis. So I think showing that and doing that something is requires a lot of guts. Also from the perspective of what is happening inside the company, we actually found artists within the company who can motivate the drivers. So we actually kind of collaborated, found a bunch of musicians, and we created a song for our driver community. And I was also a part of that, being a side musician. So we created a song for them, we uploaded that on YouTube, and it kind of motivated the driver partners that we are all together in this, right? So I think maybe finding such creative ways helps us. From the fintech perspective, one of the major crises which we faced was that fintech is heavily regulated, and there are a lot of legs if you want to, have trading experience or whatever you want to do. There are multiple legs which are involved in fintech. Now what happened was one of our major businesses, which is US stock investing, and IND Money was pioneer in that business, that our banking partner actually was being regulated by RBI, and they were asked to stop remit money outside India. Overnight that notice came to us, and our full-fledged business just stopped. It created panic amongst the customers, and the customers are obviously very high-end customers who are investing in US stocks. So that was something very, very critical situation. We had to make contingency plans which we were not even anticipating. So managing the internal teams, no one was being let go. How do we repurpose them? How do we retrain them quickly? Because we had different avenues. We had our other businesses flourishing. There was Indian stocks which was coming up, lending business was there. So we kind of mobilized all our resources there, and nothing like, faltered at that point of time, but it was something which we had to burn midnight oil for. So I think again, closing lines would be showing fortitude and resilience, and having everyone on the same page at the time of crisis is something which is very, very helpful.
Thanks, Satish. Just wanted to check with the audience, is there any questions we would have for the panelists? Are we good to go for lunch? Any questions? Just in case, if any.
They are asking what's the menu.
Happy to help. Oh, if you're done. Thank you so much, everyone, for making this really very rich and encouraging for. But I think one quick learning I'm taking out of this is that I think at every step of the journey, given the diversity of the set of people, it was like very, very difficult to just kind of get a sense in terms of how things were happening. But I think just being mindful about this, I think I'm just taking one big one at each step, and to be able to preemptively keep that ready, whether it was in supply chain, to be able to anticipate some part of these and just kind of being action ready, using enough of data and technology to build this out, right? Thank you so much. With this, we have a wrap. Thank you so much.
In fact, we got a musical note to actually conclude this conversation, very creative. Obviously, something that we'd all want to try out, but that was a phenomenal panel discussion. Once again, let's hear it for the panelists. We have some small token of appreciation reserved for you all. So, starting with Mr. Deepak Jawar. So would request you to do the rest of the honor. The moderator, Daniel Davidson. Hitesh Dua. Vishal Bhardwaj. would make that presentation shortly. Ankur Sabharwal. Rahul Tandon. Rahul Tandon, Love Kush. And Akash Jaggi. Well, the intensity of the clap has given us a cue into what you want from here on. Obviously, the lunch break. But before that, let's have a team picture here of the panelists who enriched us with the discussion on crisis-ready CX.